And welcome in to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow hosts and friends, Lino and Caelan. We have a jam-packed episode full of tons of NBA news and topics today, and we're going to get right into it because there was a massive free agency signing since our last episode. At about 3:30 a.m., I think it's been 4 nights ago at this point, Paul George signed a 4-year max contract with the Philadelphia 76ers, now forms a big three with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Lino, I want to throw it to you first on this one. What was your initial reaction to seeing Paul George's new home?
I think initially I thought this was a great trade or a great signing, rather. I thought that the Sixers are in need of some star talent. But as I've thought on it further, it just honestly doesn't feel like the right fit for either parties. Paul George, as we all understand it, is an incredibly talented player. He brings a lot to the table as a basketball player. But ultimately, the way I look at his career is very similarly to the way that I look at Kristaps Porzingis. He's a guy who's obviously known to have a lot of talent, has proven that he can't do it on his own, and has since been looking to do it with other talented players. Eventually, he found that situation in Boston. But the key to his success, I think, besides being just a great basketball player, is that it didn't ever matter whether or not he was healthy because he was on a very, very healthy team. Paul George going to the Sixers and playing alongside Embiid feels very similar to what we expected when Paul George went to the Clippers to play alongside Kawhi Leonard, and that either one of them is bound to miss a ton of games, especially in the postseason. And so it just does not seem like the right environment for Paul George to see that kind of success. And it does not seem like the superstar that Philly can depend on when Embiid is inevitably going to miss games. And so from that perspective, I became much less excited about it, but ultimately, I'm still very interested to see what happens. Micah, what did you think about the move there?
I think my first reaction was, wow, the Clippers really let him walk. That was shocking to me. I feel
Mhm.
like in today's NBA, with the way guys sign extensions, it's just very rare for a player to completely leave, no sign and trade, nothing. So that was shocking to me. And honestly, most of my perspective on this is Clippers related. Philly aside, I think they'll be very good. Definitely like a top three team in the East. They're filling out the roster well. And as long as they can stay healthy, they'll be a very good regular season team. But the Clippers angle of it just confuses me. They put out that statement after it Paul George made it clear to them that he was leaving, and they referenced the CBA and the second apron. But at least if the reporting is accurate, the breakdown between Paul George and the Clippers was about the fourth year. So if you're signing him to a 3-year deal, unless you made other moves, you would have been in the second apron for those 3 years at least. So I just don't understand their logic. And, there's been varying reports on what the Warriors really offered. Sometimes it said Kuminga was, going to be available if Paul George opted in and then was traded to the Warriors. Some said it wasn't. But I think at any rate, you still try and pursue that, even if it's, a conference rival. You still want to get something back because now he's gone. And I mean, the Clippers will be fine, but I think they'll probably be like a 6 seed. So, Caelan, do you have any thoughts about where they kind of stack up in the Western Conference now?
Um, yeah, they were the fourth seed last year. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, and that's really been about where they've been since they've acquired these guys. Yeah, no question they're gonna take a step back. I actually liked some of the signings. I guess they're not huge, impactful guys, and a few of them were not high character guys, but still some quality players in there. It's such a tough one. It really is because I don't know. Maybe there's an argument that Paul George going to the East for nothing is still kind of better than getting a little back, and him going to the West to a team that you're going to make pretty good in the Warriors if he were to go there. Um, Lean, I thought you made some good points about the health. I actually had not considered the health in Philadelphia, so I think that's a solid point. But I think where I've landed, and we're going to talk about some of the reasons for my philosophy here in a bit, but where I've landed is that Paul George was the best free agent available, and they got him. So I'm just not going to begrudge him for that. It's still a two-way guy. He's not the Paul George of old necessarily. The injuries are definitely a factor. But I think the Sixers are a team, no question, needed an upgrade, a significant upgrade if they were going to compete. And, hopefully Paul George is it. But, outside of that, no real thoughts. I mean, they kind of went and got their guy. It is what it is.
And honestly, Caelan, I think you bring up a good point in that it doesn't really come to mind his injury situation and his health because he did play 74 games last season. And
Mhm.
that's the first time he's played more than 60 games since 2018.
Yeah.
And so it's been a while.
Mhm.
And maybe this is him back to that kind of health where he can play that many games per season. But you kind of, when you take a look at the past 5 years, it's hard to see that gamble working that way, but I'd be happy to. And if he is that healthy, then he's going to be a great guy for Embiid and Maxey to depend on moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said. I would say probably the second most impactful signing we'll see as far as playoff races was Isaiah Hartenstein to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was a 3-year deal for around $90 million. Now, you hear that number at first and you're like, wow, that's a ton of money. But I started looking at it and it puts him as about the 10th highest paid center in the league. And I think there's definitely an argument he's a top 10 center. And of course, because Sam Presti is a super sharp general manager, it's front loaded in the first 2 years. It's got a partial guarantee or a team option on the third year. So when Chet's deal kicks in, when J Dub's new rookie max kicks in, they'll be able to get him off the book. So I thought it was a really smart move to make them more versatile in the present, but also keep their optionality open in the future. Lino, did you have any strong reactions to Oklahoma City acquiring Isaiah Hartenstein?
I was mostly just very excited. I think this is a perfect pickup. That is, a bit of a smaller move, not trying to swing for out of the park. You just get the guy that you need to fill a role in the roster. And they need a center power forward with some actual size, with some actual strength, and someone who can have a very demanding presence. And I think Hardenstein definitely fills that role. He had a great season last year, shot 64% from the field, and can put some threes up every once in a while, shooting 33% from the field, or from three rather. And I'm just excited to see him next to Chet or even playing behind Chet throughout the next season. I honestly don't see any risk there. It's sad that he couldn't stay with the Knicks, just in the sense that I thought if the Knicks could have brought him back, they would have been truly, truly incredible. And they'll still be really good this year, but with Hartenstein, they might have been my favorite team in the East moving forward. But, Caelan, did you have any thoughts on Hartenstein?
Dude, so I feel like I've done a lot of thinking about this OKC team and their acquisitions this free agency period. Definitely solid. I mean, Caruso and Hardenstein, two good pickups. I'm really high on Hardenstein. He's one of my favorite centers in the league. I love the way he plays. And I think definitely right now on paper, I guess you have to say OKC is the favorite coming out of the West. Just look at the rosters. I'm not super sold on them just yet. I think they could be the number one seed coming out of the West. They'll most likely have a fantastic regular season. They did last year. They only improved. So I can expect them to be better. But in the playoffs, I don't know. I still want to see how some things check out in the West. I still want to see how some of these other teams looked. Obviously, rosters aren't set. Going into the trade deadline, some teams will make moves. But I'm not 100% sold that OKC is going to be a juggernaut coming out of the West because they're really good last year and because they made these moves. Even though I do like them. So I'm still kind of in wait and see mode, I suppose, if they can get over that playoff hump that they failed to get over last year. But still solid moves, and I like Hardenstein a lot.
So you're saying you feel like regular season success could be similar, but you're not sure if this puts them into like being able to make the finals.
100%.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm interested to see it. If it were up to you, Caelan, would you start Hartenstein and Chet together, or would you have Hartenstein come off the bench?
So I've heard some discourse about this, and I think ultimately my decision will be this because I don't like I've heard some people talk about, they could do a matchup based. If they have a bigger team, they can keep Hartenstein out there, but other than that, maybe they can just keep Chet at the five. I probably would just keep Chet at the five and just go Hartenstein off the bench all the time. I don't like the whole, we could do it this way sometimes and that way sometimes. I think the best teams are just great, and you adjust to them. I don't think the best teams are changing stuff around to meet whoever. This is not how it's done. Denver had an awesome five, and that's the five they ran all the time, right? So I think however they do it, just stick with it. But I'd probably go Chet at the 5 still, and then Hershey off the bench. But what about you, Lean?
I'd have to agree with that. I think that makes the most sense. I'm not so mad at just trying stuff out throughout the season, but I do think that's going to be the one that sticks the most
Mhm.
as far as lineups that really work for them and get the most time on the floor. Micah, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's tough to say. I almost feel like for the regular season, you go double big, and then maybe in the playoffs, you go with just Chet, and that way you have a little more versatility, can switch a little more. But we'll see. I think Hartenstein, like, his passing, this is kind of just separate just to the acquisition in general, but I'm just very excited to see him working as a passing hub with all these athletes cutting around him and the movement they play with.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it'll be a huge help with their rebounding, which is their biggest weakness probably. So I just think it's a perfect fit. And if it ends up that they have Hartenstein and Caruso off the bench, like that, now you're getting into like Celtics territory of like
Mm-hmm.
your top seven, your
Mm-hmm.
top is like unreal. And that's,
Absolutely.
and Shea doesn't need to take another leap. Like if Shea's what he was last year, you have a top 5 player. And then if J Dub comes along, I think it will be important for Chet to take a leap offensively. I think you'll want to see more fluidity, just a little more consistency with his drive games, making reads, attacking closeouts, and then hopefully being more aggressive, taking threes, maybe speeding up his release a little bit. I felt like in the playoffs, you could really see the way Dallas reacted to Chet versus the way they reacted to Porzingis. Even though those guys you would think would be treated similarly, Porzingis shoots it so much faster and with so much more depth. I
Mm-hmm.
think if Chet could emulate some of that, it would help the Thunder even more. So definitely going to be a fun team to watch, and hopefully they get more nationally televised games. But if they don't, they'll definitely be the number one league pass team this year.
Oh, yeah.
We're moving on now to talk about one of the more interesting signings so far this
Here we
offseason,
go.
and that is Klay Thompson to the Dallas Mavericks. This was, it sounds like it's going to end up being some kind of sign and trade. I believe a couple seconds are going to go to the Warriors. Josh Green, it sounds like, is going to Charlotte. But a lot of these teams are waiting to finalize these deals because there's a chance all these sign and trades turn into like a 5 or 6 team deal just to make all the money and salary work for different teams. But we are pretty confident at this point Klay Thompson is heading to Dallas. Lino, I'll throw it to you first. What do you think of the fit of Klay playing with Luka and Kyrie?
Honestly, I like it. He's an off ball scorer that can average you 20 points a game, and that's effectively really what the Mavs needed. His seasons, the past few seasons, have been rough, but he's still shooting 38%, almost 39% from three as a career 3-point shooter, shooting 41%. He averaged 17 points last season per game, averaged 21 the season before that. So the good player is still in there. If he can get anything even close to a shadow of the defensive player he used to be. And maybe that can come from just being in a new environment, being out of that kind of pressure to be the second guy on a team. This could be the perfect situation for Klay. And as far as the Mavs are concerned, replacing, Tim Hardaway Jr. and Josh Green with Hall of Famer Klay Thompson just sounds great on paper. We'll see what happens on the floor, but ultimately, with the options that were there, I thought this was a great choice for the Mavs. Caelan, what did you think about the move?
I'm not high on Klay Thompson, and I feel like I've been pretty consistent ever since the Lakers beat the Warriors in the second round of the playoffs 2 years ago. I thought the biggest reason well, it was probably Anthony Davis, but the second biggest reason was Klay Thompson, in my opinion. I thought he was just really poor. I thought he couldn't make the Lakers pay when he had a lot of open looks, and he just defensively kind of a shell of himself. And I thought last year he was not very good either. I know some of the 3-point numbers are kind of eye popping, I suppose, but whenever I watch Warriors games, I just don't like what I see from Klay at all. He still has some games where he can look pretty good, but he's far from reliable in that aspect. Um, and I guess having Klay is like I don't know. I guess it's better than missing out on Klay, I suppose. But the whole fact that you get to acquire him via sign and trade, which the new CBA rules means you have to give him 3 years. I don't think anybody in the NBA just wanted to give Klay Thompson 3 years, right? And I think that the biggest sign for me that Klay is kind of cooked is just how the Warriors treated him. They didn't want Klay at all unless he was on a bargain. I don't think they wanted Klay on a fair deal. I really don't. I think that's part of the frustration with Clay. I think he felt like he was disrespected, but I think that they only wanted Clay on a bargain, because if you don't have Clay on a bargain, then he's kind of hurting your team. I don't think Clay's awesome. I really don't. I think he's a defensive minus a lot of times, and I'm curious to know what Nico Harrison and Kidd talked to him about, because I saw people talking about, well, they got Najee Marshall, they got Clay, they can do some more movement stuff. Here's what's going to happen, in my opinion. Of course, I could be wrong. Clay, go stand your ass in the corner. Go wait. You get the ball when we throw you the ball. So that's how Clay is going to be used in this role. He's not going to sniff 20 points a game. Won't get near it. Probably around 10 to 12, I think. So Clay Thompson, he's a fine acquisition. I don't think he's an awesome player at this stage of his career. And I think ultimately, Micah, you didn't mention the other two guys, Quinn Grimes and Najee Marshall, the Mavs picked up. They lost Tim Hardaway and Derrick Jones Jr. Mostly a wash for me, to be completely honest. I think they might have gotten a little better, maybe a slight improvement. But I think the biggest factor for the Mavs is that you're starting the season off with, the guys you acquired in the trade. Like, that's the biggest improvement for them over the season. I don't think Clay or the other guys are going to be that big of a needle mover, in my opinion. But what are you thinking, Micah?
I think as you were talking, it did kind of dawn on me, like putting it in from the perspective of what am I most excited to see from the Mavs next year. And for me, it's definitely year 2 of Derek Lively.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's probably almost no one they could have acquired in this offseason that would be more exciting to see, like, how that dude's going to progress.
Right.
Especially like with his short roll reads and stuff, it just his different finishes. So that's exciting. I think I agree with you for the most part. I don't think they took some huge step forward, but I think they probably gave themselves a little bit more offensive upside and probably didn't lose too much of their defensive floor. Now that depends on the politics of how much they feel like they have to play Clay. But I think we all know in the playoffs, Jason Kidd's not going to play Clay because he feels like he has to. He's going to start, Najee Marshall. He's going to do what he needs to do to not get fired. But I think in the regular season, we could definitely see like Clay started but only played 18 minutes, things like that, just depending on the matchup. But Caelan, I thought you made some interesting points about his shooting. And I think one of the reasons I'm a little more optimistic about his fit here is I think he could benefit from some of those easier catch and shoot looks that he'll be getting in this system. Like, he won't have to be running as much, won't have to be going through as much movement. And, as an off-ball shooter, especially in that Warrior system, you create your open shots. Like, how much separation you get by sprinting around a pin down is how much, separation you're going to have on your shot. Whereas when you play with Luka, like you said, he's going to be in that corner. He might not love not being that involved, but they're not going to let Lively get 8 alley-oops in a row. So then that skip pass is coming, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Clay, jump up to like 44% from 3 or something crazy this year on a lot less movement, a lot less contested shots, maybe just a lot, late stage Ray Allen, with the Heat. Like, they would run some sets for him, but a lot of it was I'm in the corner when they double Braun, I'm getting that skip pass. So I think if that's the optimistic outlook for this Klay Thompson fit. And then I think as far as the ego stuff, how he feels about himself, second units, maybe it's just him and Kyrie. I bet we see floppy, we see some different actions that are just getting him, his kind of classic Klay Thompson looks. I'm sure we'll see some post ups where he gets to his little fadeaway, just like the bigs that are defensive that you feed that first possession of the first quarter. They'll try and keep him happy, but I do think when it comes down to it, they're probably gonna need to close games against elite teams with Najee Marshall quite a bit.
Yeah, what do you think about Clay defensively? Obviously, this team wasn't fantastic early in the year, but after the trade deadline, they had new pieces. We saw them be a pretty effective defensive team, particularly when they needed to in the playoffs. How do you think Clay still holds up defensively? Like what do you think he is in this stage of his career?
Yeah, I think Clay can do all right on strength-based matchups.
Okay.
I think the speed guy is what really hurt him. And, early in his career, he was doing a fine job on Kyrie, which is something that's far gone now. But I think bigger guys he can do okay on. The problem is with Dallas, I feel like that's usually who you want Luka on. Kind of the slower guy that's going to try and post him up. Luka can, stand there and be strong. So I was listening to the Dunker Spot, and Steve Jones Jr. was saying that he thought maybe they would switch it to where PJ Washington is getting more of the Derek Lively assignments where
Mm.
he's kind of on the point of attack guys, which that's a lot to ask of PJ Washington. But then maybe you can put Clay on a slower secondary kind of creator. But regardless, Derek Lively's about to be working a lot on that back line because they're just not going to be able to contain the ball the same way they were if it's just going to be straight up Clay for Derek Jones Jr. That's a huge drop off.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I thought PJ, I thought he showed me some defensive chops in the playoffs. Particularly, guarding Tatum. I thought PJ was, pretty strong sometimes. So I'm definitely excited to get a look at them defensively. Is there anything you wanted to add on the Clay thing, Lino?
No, I think we've pretty much covered kind of, the best case scenario and worst case scenario for this. I think it could either work out really well or it could be not much of an improvement. I don't see the team being like way worse because they have Klay Thompson. And so overall, I just think this is a good move in general, and that you're not taking a ton of risk by signing a future Hall of Famer and you're leaving the ceiling for, if this guy, really just needs a new environment. We've seen that work time and time again where a guy just, Dallas has been victim to that, where Kristaps Porzingis went from looking like a bust to being a crucial piece to an incredible team that was the champions last year. So hopefully they get to now reap the benefit of bringing in a disgruntled star, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well said. And I think vibes are an important thing with Klay Thompson. He's a very vibe based guy. And the Mavs team, at least
Very
last year, had
emotional guy.
awesome vibes. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was like team power friendship. So that could be really, really beneficial. And I think he'll be, on a little revenge tour. I think he'll be wanting to prove the Warriors made a mistake. But we'll move from one shooter to another. Probably the second biggest shooting guard on the market. Probably the best player in terms of shooting guards that was available. And that's Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, was signed to the Orlando Magic for, I believe it was a 3-year, $66 million deal. Personally, we don't have to spend a lot of time here, but I love this move for the Magic. I think this was probably the best player available they could have gotten, and they didn't wait. They didn't let Paul George play him for a meeting. Like they're like, we know PG's not coming here. We're signing this guy we want. And it just is an upgrade on Gary Harris, who they kept. So they still have that guy coming off the bench for defense and shooting, but KCP will open up a lot. The only thing with Orlando is I wish they could have found a way to get a little more creation in the door, especially in the guard room. But they're going to rely heavily on Paolo and Franz. And I think Paolo especially we'll see a decent playmaking jump from him this year. It really seemed like last season the playoff crucible showed him a lot of things he could work on, and I trust him to improve. I think he's going to be a really excellent player for a long time. So I think we'll see some devastating defensive lineups that lean heavily on Paolo creating shots for these guys, but I think that could work, especially because they're so deep. I think they'll again have one of the best benches and could definitely see them competing for a top 4 seed, because even if they have a couple injuries, they still have so many good players up and down the roster. Next up, what's up?
Sorry, no, I was just gonna add. Yeah, I thought that the Paolo piece of this was probably the most interesting part for me, because we've been talking about this since we started the podcast. The idea that they need help with the creation stuff. I thought, based on what we saw from the last playoffs, that it's a relatively safe assumption to assume that Paolo is going to need a little non-Franz help on the creation aspect. But, I guess another year of taking another look at it, another year of development for Paolo, it isn't the worst thing in the world. Again, these guys are still young. You could bring a point guard in who was talented. They still wouldn't be, ready to push for a championship. So I'm not mad at another year of Paolo being, the main guy on ball. Just get another look at it, and maybe if there's another flame out, or, if it doesn't look great, then maybe we can try and upgrade that position next offseason. So I'm fine with that.
I completely agree. I think the best guard we've seen get moved so far is DeJounte Murray, and he's a fine fit there, but I'd like more playmaking upside. And the nice thing is Orlando, all these guys they've signed are very tradable contracts. They haven't overpaid anyone. So it could be February we hear they are trading for, Darius Garland or some high-level guard that fits the timeline. So I think they're smart to slow play it, and they're building something special for sure. We'll move on now to another team that is trying to build something special, and that is the San Antonio Spurs. They signed free agent guard Chris Paul to, I believe it was an $11 million contract. This will allow him to be the maestro to set up the generational talent that is Victor Wembanyama. Very excited to see how he can help Wemby's development. Lino, what was your reaction to Chris Paul to San Antonio?
I love this pickup by the Spurs and their offseason so far, even starting with the draft, just starts to make more and more sense with every decision they make so far. Chris Paul, obviously legendary Hall of Famer player. This guy is someone who joins a team and that team just gets better, especially when it comes to young teams in a rebuilding phase. He goes to the Suns very early and he makes that team way better. They win like 20 more games than they did the season before he was there. When he was in OKC, he went over there and, they had plans of tanking and he literally just didn't let them. So if I remember history correctly, they had to trade Chris Paul because they were too good with him. And so they were like, we need to actually tank. So we got to get you out of here. And, he goes to the Rockets. He's a lot of success there. And I think he's going to come to San Antonio. And if you wanted to speed track Wemby's development and the team around Wemby's development, then this is the exact guy you want to bring in. He's a great floor general. You pretty much have a head coach on the floor at all times when he's on the floor, and it's just going to be great. And it makes the Stephon Castle draft pick make so much more sense when you look at it in the sense that maybe they always had plans of bringing him in at this point. Like we know what kind of point guard we're going to have for the next 2, maybe 3 years, depending on Chris Paul's like tenure. And we're just going to have someone who can definitely do the job of passing the ball to Wemby. And then, bank on when it's time for Wemby to, make the full push, maybe 3-4 years from now to a final championship. There's going to be a point guard out there that wants to play next to the best center in the league. And so banking on that, knowing that you have time for that, and filling in other roles in the meantime is just a really smart decision, in my opinion. But Micah, what were you thinking about this pickup? And did you have any thoughts otherwise?
Yeah, I'm excited for Wimby just to have somebody that is going to relentlessly get the ball to him. Like if like Wimby can trust he can like not love his post position and he can pass it out and know he'll get it back. So something like that's exciting. But yeah, I think the Stephon Castle note is a great one to hit on because I think that might be the most important player on the Spurs. I know Shea Gilgeous-Alexander has talked a lot about how valuable his time with Chris Paul was when they overlapped in Oklahoma City. So I think any young guard, even Devin Vassell, like being around Chris Paul, that's just going to be really important for these guys. It probably will increase how often they complain about foul calls, but for the most part, it will be a net positive for their development. So I'm excited. I think it's just a really smart move, and it's something I wish all rebuilding teams would do. But, a lot of these guys only are going to want to play with like a generational prospect. I don't think Kyle Lowry is going to Washington. So we'll see what happens from there on out. But next, we'll kind of open the floor a little bit to discuss pretty much all the extensions and re-signings that have happened this offseason. So we don't have them in the main notes category simply because it's par for the course. All these guys are getting a lot of new money to stay with their teams. Some of those people include Donovan Mitchell staying with Cleveland, Tyrese Maxey staying with Philly, Derek White staying with Boston, Cade Cunningham, rookie max with the Pistons, Jason Tatum, the largest extension in NBA history with the Celtics, and then LeBron James signing just today a 1-1 to stay with the Lakers on what will be a max or 99% of a max. So, Caelan, I wanted to open it up to you first. Whichever team you want to start with, did any of these kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, I think our friends to the north, they escape a lot of ire because we just don't care about them. We don't worry about them. They're another country. I remember after the Toronto Raptors championship win, I remember a lot of chest beating, I feel like, from Masai Ujiri and even a little love affair from the media, kind of dressing these guys up as, one of the smart organizations and how they built that roster that was just deep all around it. They had good players, and some of those guys were like projects that, evolved to be very good all-star caliber players. Pascal Siakam comes to mind. Um, since that title, what in the world has been going on in Toronto? I mean, pretty much every year has been what's the plan with this? We get rid of some of our guys a little later than we should, and We don't necessarily get back what we could have gotten back, and I think this free agency, giving what was it, $400 million to Emmanuel Quickly and Scotty Barnes. That's absolutely insane. That is a terrible idea. Maybe these guys grow into people who are like worth that, but under no circumstance. Emmanuel Quickly, not even close. I feel like I just don't look at him as one of those guys. I really, truly do not. And Scotty Barnes, you can make the argument. He's like your homegrown kid. You want to invest in him. I'm not sure he's quite there yet. Some nights, the offense just isn't there. He's not a reliable number one, and I'm just not positive if he ever will be one. We haven't seen that consistency from him. So I thought those contracts were very strange. What's supposed to be happening in Toronto, right? Are they supposed to be winning, losing? What's their goal? Do you guys see a vision for the Raptors, Lean?
Not at all. I would say that they're probably just punting. Like we don't have a move that we trust is going to win. We don't want to lose the players we have. So it feels very reminiscent to the 3 years of hell we lived in Miami when our one of our biggest contracts was like James Johnson and Hassan Whiteside, and you just have these guys. You don't really feel like you're getting anybody coming in the door anytime soon, and you're not trying to piss off the players you have, and so you pay them, and you see what's out there, and hopefully they either flourish and you can trade it, or you attach some draft picks to tank when you're really ready to tank. Sometimes there's just this limbo teams get stuck in, especially teams that don't love tanking. Some teams, some organizations are like, okay, this is a bad year, we're kicking rocks. Other teams will resist that moment at all cost, especially if they feel like maybe their fan base is a little bit more vulnerable than others to those kind of situations. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I diagnose in that situation over there, is that they just really want to kick it to the next set of downs. But Micah, were you thinking anything differently?
I think the most frustrating thing with the Raptors is it seems like there's a lack of direction. I
Yes.
think the best thing they've done, the best year they've had from a team building standpoint since the championship year was the Tampa year, because they tanked. They almost traded Lowry, but then they didn't, but they at least shut him down. And they got the number 4 pick in the draft. They got Scotty Barnes, and that's the really only solidified building block they have right now.
Right.
And I think that's the problem, because we all were, I think I can speak for all of us, pretty excited about Rob Dillingham. Thought that made a lot of sense for Minnesota. Do you know whose pick that was? That was the Raptors pick that they traded for Jakob
Poeltl. No.
Like, if we were like, oh man, Quickly, Dillingham, Barnes, Barrett, like that's a fun little core, but they're not seeming to pick a direction. They got 3 firsts for Siakam, but then they traded one of them to get Ochai Agbaji and Kelly Olynyk. And now that first wasn't a great first, but you might as well just get a guy on a rookie contract, someone you bring in. So yeah, just a direction. Maybe they're one of these teams kind of like Indiana that just never wants to fully bottom out. And it seems like last year they started the right way, moving OG, moving Siakam, but then again, they still tried to acquire some talent, and it ended up costing them their first. So I know Raptors fans are very passionate. I do like some of your young players. I'm totally good with the Scotty Max. As a rookie max is 25% of the cap. He's worth that. Quickly's an eye of the beholder guy. I know people that like Quickly are like, he's not that far from Maxey. And I know people that don't like Quickly are like, he's probably a 6-man.
Not that far from Maxey?
People like Knicks, like when he got traded, there were people saying that the Raptors got the best trade the best player in the OG Anunoby deal.
I just want to be clear for the audience. The deal that Emmanuel Quickly got was 5 years, $175 million. The first thing that I immediately said was, who wants 5 years of Quickly? Why? 5 years?
Yeah, it's tough. And it's one of those things where it's like, if he hits restricted free agency,
bro, go. We're fine with that.
That's what the Mavericks said to Jalen Brunson. It's tough.
For the Mavs, I think.
Well, that's true. I mean, they're
the finals.
They could be better off with Jalen Brunson, but I get your point. So it's tough for teams. I'm sympathetic to it. I'm not as high on Quickly just because, like, really skinny guards, and he's good defensively. Like he's very active, gets through screens, but he's still small. So it's tough if he's going to be your second highest paid player. But my main point would be if they keep their team as it is right now, I think that's great because they probably won't make the playoffs. They'll get a lottery pick. I think that's the right move. So don't add vets. Play your young guys, let them develop, see if you can move RJ Barrett for something potentially. And other than that, just pick the direction of rebuilding. Because even if you believe Scotty's your number one alpha, you still need at least a running mate with him. Quickly Barrett, those guys are probably good role players.
Scotty's going to have to take a big leap to be. If he's the number one, he's one of the worst number ones in the league.
Well, I think they're projecting.
But I don't see him projecting to be an upper level one. I don't think he's going to be a top 12 player at any point in his career.
Agree. I think second best player on a really good team is something Scotty can definitely be because the defense is there, the passing is there. Hopefully the shot will come along. There were stretches of the season last year where the shot was there, but others where it wasn't.
Which honestly makes me think maybe they're trying to set up for a similar situation as to when they won the championship. Like, we got Scotty. We know he's never going to be the first guy. But if we can trick one player into coming and playing with us for one season, we can make a huge push to win the championship again. In the similar way that Kawhi showed up for 1 year, they had a team around Kawhi that was incredible, but was obviously missing like a 1A. And, if we can just force one to come here for a season, let him, ball out with one of the better rosters in the league and give ourselves a good shot. Maybe they just feel like this is the only way we're ever going to do it. Like, we don't have another path. So, quite the gamble, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, that was certainly more Raptors talk than I thought we would get to. But Caelan, I know you also had some Lakers things you wanted to cover. Speaking of these different signings, moves that haven't happened, what have been your thoughts on the Lakers offseason so far?
Dude, one of the weirdest off seasons, especially for a team that didn't acquire anybody, still a very strange free agency, I think. Starting with the whole coaching search thing, that was very weird. They got that shored up now. Man, I've been just so irritated, I think, with Lakers discourse, how people discuss it. People who are smart, people who know more than me, for sure. But some of the frustrating stuff, dude. Let's start with LeBron, I guess. I think I'm really irritated with like the LeBron GM stuff that everyone talks about. LeBron's a star player in this league, a star player on his team. He has every right to be in Rob Pelinka's ear saying, do this, do that. Everybody does it. You don't care when other people do it, is the thing. You only care when LeBron does it. Okay, it doesn't bother you if Giannis says, trade our second best player for Dame. Right? How'd that work out? Not very well, but it doesn't really bother you. It doesn't bother you that Giannis said, I don't like Nick Nurse, a proven championship coach. I like Adrian Griffin. How'd that work out? But it doesn't really bother you when stuff like that happens. Okay, Rob Pelinka is not only the GM, he's the president of basketball operations for the Lakers. He has two hats. Okay, if you want to listen to your star, listen to your star. That's fine. If you want to do your own thing, do your own thing. Make the right decision. That's your job. You're being paid to do the right thing. So figure that out. It's on Rob Pelinka. And moving to Bronny, guys, this is one of the most irritating things of my life, I swear. Do you guys know who Maxwell Lewis is? Have you heard of this person? No?
It doesn't sound super familiar. Sounds vaguely familiar.
Okay. If you go check the Lakers roster, it's one of our 15 players. How did we get this guy? He was drafted. He's a 40th pick in last year's draft, right? A second round pick. Does anybody know what his deal was? Do you know? 3 years plus a fourth year team option, all guaranteed at league minimum. Do you know what Bronny's deal is? It's 3 years guaranteed with a fourth year team option every year league minimum is what he's getting. How many players in the second round got that exact Bronny deal last season or last draft? Do you guys know?
I have no idea.
12. 12 other players in the second round took this exact same deal. Not only did you not care about it, you didn't even hear about it because it wasn't a thing, because it happens all the time, right? It's so frustrating. People don't care about this, bro. You don't care about Bronny. You don't care that, man, there was another player who deserved to be picked and he doesn't get the chance. Stop it. You don't care about that, bro. Stop it. LeBron did not put a gun to Rob Pelinka's head and said, draft this kid and pay him $8 million. That's what Rob Pelinka, as the GM and president, chose to do. Okay. If Bron put it in his ear, that's Bron's right. Every star is in their GM's ear. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about the acquisition or non-acquisition of any of the players. Strange offseason in that the Lakers, if LeBron took the pay cut that he said he was going to take, they'd have $12 million. That's nothing. You see the deals that the players are signing in today's NBA. It's a mid-level exception. It's nothing. Last year, we spent the MLE on Gabe Vincent. Okay, say what you want about Gabe. That's about the quality of player you should be expecting at an MLE. Okay, DeRozan's already said, I'm not playing for that. It's not enough money. You can't get that caliber of player with that money. So people talking about Rob Pelinka. I know he's a frustrating cat. I know it. Some of this is on him because he just can't get the deals done. It's on him. It's not just people saying no. He just can't get the deals done. I understand that. Okay. But like the Klay Thompson stuff, I don't know. I don't want Klay 3 years. I really don't. Maybe if we had him for a season, if we could just pick him up, for a season, sure. A 3-year deal for Klay, how much he got, I'm good. Klay's not very good, guys. Just not. James Harden, bro. LeBron knows nothing about team building. I can't wait to see how close to Michael Jordan he is when he owns a team. He's terrible. Jonas Valanciunas, what are you talking about? Why would he come here? But it's not a good idea, bro. You are very slow with this stuff. Okay, James Harden, no. LeBron, stop. So none of these players I thought that LeBron was mentioning were good ideas to acquire in the first place. Is it frustrating that we did not upgrade our roster? I'm super irritated about that. I truly am. I want it to be better going into next season. But you can't win every ring, bro. You just can't. You can't be a final contender every single year. Some years just don't work out for you. Okay, we have a competitive team. Lakers win a lot of regular season games, probably be in the play-in. Okay, it just is what it is, bro. It's not LeBron deserves it because he's XYZ. Oh, stop it, bro. Steph doesn't have an awesome team. KD's team not awesome. It just is what it is. It just is what it is, man. So please, in summary, please no more with the LeBron GM stuff, bro. He has a right to say what he wants. You don't have to listen. If you're the GM and president, do what you want. Okay, you're Rob Pelinka. Make a smart decision. That's number one. Number two, leave Bronny alone. You guys don't care. There were second-round picks signing these deals. Okay, I saw Yahoo Basketball tweet out, oh, look, he's making like double what Jokic was making. That's so disingenuous. We know the salaries. I won't do it. Guys, the discourse around the Lakers is so just not high vibrational. It's low vibrations. It's so irritating.
When you bring that up, you're talking to the choir right now. We lived through the last few years that Udonis has him on the roster and the pearl clutching of like, whoa, that roster spot could go to a 15th guy who could really help us win right now while we feel Justice Winslow, James Johnson, and Josh Richardson. Like we need that spot. And it's like, no, you don't.
You don't.
It's fine.
You don't care is the biggest thing. You don't even it doesn't really bother you for
really
real.
Bother you. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's a really great point, especially when you bring up all the contracts that just the Jokic thing is crazy because he got drafted so long ago. It's like minimum deals are double what they used to be. Like that's just what it is.
The thing was that the Lakers literally just did the Bronny thing last year with Maxwell Lewis. They just did this, bro. They just took a guy in the second round, guaranteed his deal. If you look right now, people don't know their Googles. If you look right now, he's on the roster. Who is that guy? You don't know who Maxwell Lewis is. He's on the roster because he signed his deal. That's how it goes. And clutch clients, if you don't know, clutch clients get taken care of in this league. That's how the league works. Rich Paul knows what he's doing. He's a very powerful agent in this league. Clutch clients, first round, whether they're superstars, all-stars, whether they're second-round picks, they get taken care of in this league. Whatever that looks like for them. For Bronny, getting taken care of means getting a guaranteed deal instead of a two-way deal when, granted, over half of the second-round picks get two-way deals. That's how it goes, okay? But, in this case, it wasn't, that's fine. Lakers just did this, bro. They just did it last year. You didn't hear about it. You didn't care about it. So just don't pretend to, don't do the fake mad stuff. You don't care about Bronny. You don't.
Yeah, well said. Lino, when you said he's speaking to the choir, I thought you were going to talk about us being fans of a team that employed LeBron James at one point.
I did too.
Oh, that too. Yeah, I mean that also.
It's unpleasant. It like when I was a Heat fan, obviously, or when LeBron was on the Heat and I was a fan, I was like looking forward to him leaving, mostly just to see like, okay, who's still gonna be around? Because not only is it, you just have LeBron fans that follow LeBron, which I'm totally cool with, but
Mhm.
it's the media circus that comes with it. It's Brian Windhorst being in your city every day, trying to talk to your assistant coaches about what's going on. And it's tough. Like you're talking about, like highly publicized LeBron said he'd take a pay cut for this list of players. Why do we know that? How many other superstars would we know that about? But the need for Lakers coverage, especially by the worldwide leader, is insatiable. They're just constantly looking for anything. We were in the finals and they were talking about the Lakers. So I'm with you. It's all just overdone to varying degrees. And that earlier this week it was saying Jokic was pushing Denver to trade for Westbrook, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's cool,"
Right.
and that was it.
Right.
Like so
Russ is
I
no
just
Russ. We've seen this with a star put right on.
yeah. So I'm with you. It's just
Oh,
really overdone, and,
it's
and the Bronny stuff
maddening,
especially is
bro.
it creeps into like weird parts of the internet where it's like, what are y'all really like mad about here?
Yes.
Like it's I like a and just to kind of like piggyback on what you were saying, second round picks are really valuable now because of the second apron, because of the new CBA,
Mhm.
because you can sign them to below the minimum contract. Like you see these 4-year deals for second round picks, that's really valuable because they're making less than the minimum.
Mhm.
So that might be $500,000-$800,000 you can sneak in with your 15th roster spot, your 14th roster spot. That's why you
Uh,
saw good teams like Boston
that's not
trading
true.
back to get which part.
That's not true. The Bronny is making the league minimum. The league minimum is like 1 point something million.
Well, yes. Sorry, the vet minimum is 2.5. So it's better to have second round rookies
Yes.
signed to a deal
Yeah.
than trying to fill out your roster with free agent
Yeah,
minimums.
because
Sorry,
even even I think even Jokic was making like $1 million a year. I think back then.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So
So it's more beneficial to have these second round picks on these cheaper deals instead of filling out your roster with veteran minimums.
yes.
So it's advantageous because, like we're all saying, your 15th, your 14th guy, they're not really going to add a lot to your roster.
Bro.
So people are just, they want to talk. We know why people are really trying to talk about this stuff. But before we move on to some kind of non-roster construction moves, did you guys have anything else on the rest of these free agents or any of these extensions, anything like that? We'll talk about free agents that haven't signed later, but just
Okay.
the guys that have signed so far.
Yeah, last thing I want to say very briefly is that, Donovan Mitchell signing with Cleveland sucks for Miami Heat fans, awesome for Cleveland. But I've seen the Utah Jazz fan base randomly just pops up on my feed all the time now, and I just feel like it's been a very disingenuous conversation there as well about how they failed to keep Mitchell. I think at a certain point, some guys just don't want to live in Utah. Like, I think Donovan saw everything that he could have seen in Utah and decided, I want to play somewhere else. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there was anything they could have done to make him sign a max extension and stay in Utah. And I don't think there's anything they did to really kick him out. They built good teams around him. They, prioritized his needs as often as they could. And it just didn't work out. But the fan base seems to feel that there was something that could have been done to keep him from wanting to go somewhere where he feels more comfortable and where he feels like he can win. And I just didn't think that was true. So shout out to Donovan Mitchell for, finding a place, especially with another small market team, and really proving that it's not necessarily about the fact that it's a small market. Sometimes it's just about fit.
Yeah, people forget D Mitch hated Rudy Gobert. Did not like him at all. Like
They did not
that was one
play
of the
very well
reasons bro wanted to get out of there.
the last few years.
Like, he did not like him at all. He gave him COVID, didn't he? I thought he gave him COVID.
They're also Utah fans. You got like 5 first-round picks and Lauri Markkanen and Colin Sexton for Donovan Mitchell. So like,
Yeah,
at
I
least
think
you
they
got
did
a
pretty
great
well.
return.
Right. Utah's in a good spot, dude.
Yeah, y'all are great. Also, while we're here, we might as well hit on this. Do you guys think there's a realistic chance Markkanen gets moved? Lauri Markkanen, for listeners that may not know, incredible 7 foot 3 point shooting specialist out of Utah. He's an all star. There's been a lot of trade rumors lately. He kind of seems to be the new hot name now that the
Mhm.
big free agents have signed. Caelan, what do you think? Do you think there's a chance the Warriors, the Spurs, or some of the rumored teams? Do you think there's a real chance Utah would move him now?
Oh, I think there's a real chance because people are very thirsty right now, and the president of what Utah got going on is Danny Ainge. We know all about Danny Ainge. Man loves to wheel and deal. Man loves picks.
Hey,
Man loves to take advantage of less savvy.
desperation.
So yeah, I think there's a real chance he gets moved at the deadline.
And it's going to cost.
But yeah, like Lean said, it's gonna be whew, big bag. Go ahead, Lean.
No, that was it. I just think he's gonna hit. You are not going to have anything left if you trade for Lauri Markkanen. So you better be ready, and you better have the team that's ready to win now. Because
Hmm.
if not, you're gonna be stuck in a bad way.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of what makes it tough. I like Lowry a lot. Everybody essentially does. As good as he is, I think it still depends on like where he goes. I feel like there are a lot of teams that maybe could use him and they'd make him a contender, but pushing them over the top, I don't know. I feel like there may be only a few teams. Like I don't know. People were talking about Golden State, Lowry Markin going to Golden State. Like, where do you think uh, if the Warriors started the season with Golden State, where do you think that they would finish in the standings?
I think that's probably the worst place he could go because
Oh,
I
really?
just don't think it matters that much there, and they need their future. They need their future desperately. And so what they'd have to give up and what they're risking for maybe one more, two more good seasons with Steph, it's just not worth trading your next 10, first round picks
Unless
and
Utah
lost.
loves Kaminga,
Yeah,
have to be
I
in love with
guess.
him.
Whereas if you were to go somewhere like the Spurs, it's like, okay, they probably have just a bunch of you got those Atlanta picks you can give up. You've got just random Minnesota picks you can give up. Bring in Lauri Markkanen, his timeline probably lines up better, and you have more time to make that work because you have a younger team around him. A place like that, cashing in makes a lot more sense to me than a place that's really at the end of an era and needs to have draft capital after it's over.
That makes sense. I think to me, I think it's a mute point because if Danny Ainge was taking anything reasonable for Lowry Markkinen, he'd be on the Thunder. But the fact that he's not on the Thunder means he's asking for the world. And Lino, you make a great point. I think like to me, if Lowry's your third best player, you're a championship contender. But most of the teams we're hearing he would be like their second best player, and I don't think that's going to get you over the top. And for what it'll cost, you need this move to really take you to the promised land. So I don't think it happens anytime soon. But you guys are right. There's a lot of desperation in the air. So if somebody gets crazy enough, we could see it happen.
Just one thing to add, he's going into the last year of his deal, so if you trade for him, you have to pay him. So
Yeah.
you're gonna need.
And that's the other thing. If you're Utah, you can renegotiate and extend him, and he'll be he'd be tradable on a max. Like he's an incredibly good player, so he's more acquirable right now from other teams because he only makes like 18 million, but he'll be valuable on no matter the contract. So Utah has all the leverage because they are in no rush to do anything. So and apparently Markkinen's camp likes him in that spot. Like it's not like he's getting pressuring them like trade requests or whatever. So we'll see what happens. But I think that's kind of just people are trying to figure out the next bit of drama to cling to. So we'll see. But a team that is all too familiar with drama is the Detroit Pistons. And they have finally acquired, signed, reached an agreement with their new head coach. And that is going to be JB Bickerstaff. So JB was with Cleveland. He was unemployed for all of 3 days. And now he is the head coach for Lino's Detroit Pistons. Lino, what do you think about this fit in Detroit?
I love it, man. JB Bickerstaff is the type of coach that the Pistons need. I think he has a track history and a long track history of coming in and developing young, bad teams. You know, I think he started off with the Grizzlies. They were awful. David Fizdale gets fired. He takes over, and he doubles the amount of wins they get in the next season. He goes to Cleveland, a team that's constantly struggling. And eventually, he gets Donovan Mitchell, which helps out a lot. But in his first and second year, he doubled the amount of wins that they saw as a very young team. And I think it'll be pretty easy to double the amount of wins the Pistons got last year, but I do think he is definitely a developmental coach who knows how to connect with young players and get them all on the same page and really bring out the best in those players. And so, will he be around for the next Pistons championship team? Unlikely, given that he almost is always given the boot as soon as the team reaches like 60% wins in the season. But I do think he's good at getting that team to that point, and he can honestly make a career out of that. If you just have a reputation of coming in and taking on a lottery team and making them competitive to where free agents want to go there, then that's a great thing to hang your hat on. So shout out to him. I'm excited to see what kind of changes he makes and what he can do with this team. They still obviously have a lot of flaws, especially when it comes to shooting, but I'm excited to see how he handles the situation there. Micah, did you have any thoughts about Bickerstaff to the Pistons?
I think it could be a good culture setter. He definitely is a defense first kind of coach. I don't know how uh, creative he can get with the offense necessarily, but he was dealt a tough hand in Cleveland with, two bigs and two guards that overlap a lot in skill set. But if he thought he didn't have much shooting there, oh boy, get ready, because you're not even going to think about the 3-point line when you're in Detroit, unless Fred Vincent can work miracles. But TBD on that. But yeah, I think it's a fine fit. I think of the guys available, if you're choosing between him and Borrego, I think perfectly fine to go with him. He's somebody that just won a playoff series, so that's something you can at least hang your hat on. So definitely totally fine pickup, and be interested to see kind of how his philosophies carry over to Motor City. The last bit of news before we get into some free agent predictions is the Boston Celtics are for sale. Maybe the most shocking news so far of the offseason, but it was announced that Boston is basically putting up for sale the majority stake in their ownership. Now, you can read into this a lot of ways. Could definitely just be a sell high, just won the championship, accomplished all there is to accomplish. Let's sell it and make $7 billion or whatever it's going to end up being. But some people are starting to take notice that ownership seems to be okay moving off teams more than usual recently. We had a Mark Cuban sell off his majority stake with the Mavs. Obviously, the Timberwolves sell has been very publicized. But now we have Boston. So it's like, is it the second apron? Is it the new media deal? It seems like people on the inside, for whatever reason, are wanting to get out of the business of owning an NBA team. So that could be hinting at like a bubble burst coming. It could just be total coincidence, but something to keep an eye on kind of moving forward, because it is strange. I think if I had to guess, it's just that they know these second apron payments are coming in. And I think Boston, if all of the players if they're starting 5 plus Al Horford all finish out their contracts, it'll be close to $1 billion worth of salary total over the next like 5 or 6 years.
It's
So,
crazy.
and that's not even including, with the second apron, it gets multiplied, however much you are over the luxury tax. So
Damn.
they have a
That's actually
big,
nasty work. Locking in all those salaries and then leaving is
yeah.
like setting a building on fire.
It was like literally right after the Derek White extension, the news broke that they're selling. I was like, that's
It's
crazy. So, and somebody will buy it. And also,
yeah.
I mean, this is not exactly a rational confidence thing, not our wheelhouse, but apparently Jeff Bezos is selling like $5 billion worth of Amazon stock today. And he's been involved like with the NFL recently and potentially buying a team. So maybe Jeff Bezos is about to own the Boston Celtics. We'll
Oh
see.
my
That would
gosh,
be,
he is very
a
selfish.
match made in heaven, in my opinion. Maybe I should say a match made in hell. But to move on to our last segment, we're
No,
going
I'm
Bezos.
to
done. I'm done. I'm sorry now. I'm sorry now.
but if you guys don't have anything else to close it out, I'll read off our 6 different social media pages for everybody to check us out at. We have been trying to kind of expand our horizons here. So we have an Instagram page now, which is at Irrational Confidence Pod. So that's the same as TikTok at Irrational Confidence Pod. Unfortunately, that exceeds the Twitter character limit for a username. So on Twitter, we are at IrrationalNBA. easy enough to find. The Gmail is the same, confidenceirrational@gmail.com. And yeah, check us out on YouTube as well, Rational Confidence Pod. So thank you guys all for tuning in. We will be coming to you probably sometime next week, maybe with a little summer league coverage. Hopefully one of our teams will employ DeMar DeRozan at that point. But for myself, Micah, my fellow hosts, Lino and Caelan, we appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.